Hey, everybody, and welcome back to For the Booze.
For the Booze.
That's right.
We are back for another week following Halloween.
Yes.
We took a week off.
Yeah.
Because Halloween is always, it's the biggest time of year for the podcast.
Yes, absolutely.
A lot went into that one. And hopefully on this one, you're going to notice a difference.
Yes.
I'm hoping.
Hopefully.
But we are going to take our first trip into paranormal adjacent.
I'm so excited.
It's going to be some true crime mixed with some paranormal down the road.
I love paranormal, but let me tell you, I love true crime so much more.
We've said it on the show before.
I love true crime. Like, I am one of those weirdos that will listen to it to fall asleep.
Yeah, I do it. I listen to it in the shower while I'm cooking.
All the time. It's so crazy. And then we'll sit and watch TV, and we're like, let's find a crime to watch.
Yeah.
Interrogation videos, something,
If you see me looking off to the side, I'm sorry. There's another computer over here now.
Yes.
I'm trying to monitor what we're doing. But we are going to, for our very first one, we are going to travel to Florida. Not that far from where we once lived.
This is true.
And we're going to talk about the killer cop, Gerard John, what's his name again? Schaefer. Gerard John Schaefer.
Okay.
I don't know why he's got to have the middle name in there, but, and he is a bad man. This is going to be, it's going to be a rough one.
Yes.
I'm not going to lie. It is going to be a rough one. Some of these things are going to have to be censored for the video.
Yep.
So,
and it's also a big one.
Yeah, this is going to be our first, I think, 3-part.
Yeah. Just for this. For this guy.
That's right.
Right here.
So this first one's we're going to get into this. It's going to be the kind of the start of, we're going to go to the beginning of his life. We're going to work our way through. Okay. We're going to go beginning of life, crimes, and then the paranormal tie-in at the end. So it's really cool. It's down in Port St. Lucie, which, I mean, we didn't live in Port St. Lucie, but we lived close enough.
Mm-hmm. Like an hour and a half, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. And I just don't know how more people don't know about this case, because it is, when I started looking into this, I had to write down some things that even I was like, oh, whoa.
Really?
Yeah, and that's just in this first part. And he does some really, really bad stuff.
See, I don't ever remember learning or hearing about him, but the place that this ties into, I've definitely heard of that growing up in Florida.
Oh, yeah.
So I am very excited.
It is going to get rough.
I say excited, but don't take that the wrong way.
It's going to get rough. I don't know what else to say. I'm trying to put it out there enough so that way don't listen to this with kids. Don't watch this with kids. The stuff we're going to talk about it's pretty bad.
Very earmuffs. Earmuffs for the littles
or for your
if you're
grandparents.
going to be listening to this around them.
So let's get into this.
Okay, let's do it. I'm so excited.
The 1960s and 70s in Florida were a real defining time for the state. Florida's tourism increased after 1965, partially due to the construction of NASA's command centers across Cape Canaveral, Titusville, and of course Merritt Island in 1961.
All places we lived.
Oh yeah.
Super close to.
I used to work out there.
Yeah, I know.
In 1964, tourists were able to drive around Merritt Island on Sundays, and by 1966, tours of the facility were offered. Approximately 1 million people traveled to the area in July 1969 to witness the space launch that took Neil Armstrong to the moon.
Yay!
Big time for Florida. They still talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Disney World was opened in 1971, and Florida became a theme park capital, with small roadside attractions with larger theme parks.
Is a tribute to the philosophy and the life of Walter Elias Disney, and to the talents, the dedication, and the loyalty of the entire Disney organization that made Walt Disney's dream come true. May Walt Disney World bring joy and inspiration and new knowledge to all who come to this happy place. A magic kingdom where the young at heart of all ages can laugh and play and learn together. Dedicated this 25th day of October, 1971.
Some of the smaller attractions included Weeki Wachee Springs, Cypress Gardens, and Silver Springs.
I have been to 2 of the 3 of those.
We lived across the street from Silver
Springs, yes. But I've been to Weeki Wachee Springs.
I've been to Weeki Wachee. I've been to Cypress Gardens, too.
I don't think I've ever been
I've been to all of these.
I don't know. I probably did. I just don't remember.
I grew up going to Silver Springs. Yeah. I mean, I have memories of, like, getting a girlfriend in middle school at Silver Springs, like way back in the day.
I'd never been until I moved there and met you.
It's fun. It was right next door to Wild Waters.
Yes.
Now, Florida was also a major battleground for the civil rights movement. And in 1964, Martin Luther King Jr. and other civil rights leaders supported integrationists in St. Augustine, where they staged nonviolent demonstrations at segregated beaches and pools.
Dr. King, meanwhile, together with 4 close aides, had moved his personal campaign to America's oldest city, St. Augustine in Florida. The town was a stronghold of the Ku Klux Klan. Many of its members had been sworn in as special deputies by the sheriff, an outspoken segregationist. For King, that made it a perfect place from which to keep the struggle on the nation's television screens and ratchet up pressure on Washington.
I've just returned from the East, from New England. I had a chance to talk with many people, some of whom are considered some of the very outstanding leaders and people of our nation. I believe that I was uttering the truth when I said to them that the Negroes of St. Augustine, Florida, and those that have come in from other communities and their allies in the white community are determined to march the streets of this city until the walls of segregation come crumbling down.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that Martin Luther King came to Florida to fight for, black rights and stuff. I
don't think any of it obviously should have ever happened in the first place, but good on him for visiting specific places and things and kind of going all over and talking about and doing all his preaching.
Where are you going with this?
I don't know.
The 1960s and 1970s saw a large influx of Cuban immigrants to Miami, which began to take on a Latin American character. So the state really started to grow at a rapid rate. But today's story takes place in the small area of Port St. Lucie. At the time, it was a very small area.
Yeah, because
it's not now.
It's not now.
It's grown a lot. But
yeah.
The case that we're going to talk about, when it's very small. It's a very small town. Mm-hmm. It hasn't grown yet.
Wow.
It is believed that the name St. Lucie was first introduced to the area by the Spanish. And in 1565, Fort Santa Lucia was built by the Spanish at the Jupiter Inlet. And construction for this fort began on December 13th, the feast day of the Roman Catholic Saint Lucia. I think it's Lucia.
Okay.
Now, Pedro Menendez de Aviles established a colony in 1567 called Santa Lucia, somewhere between Vero Beach and Stewart. Now, old Spanish maps identify the area as Santa Lucia. The current St. Lucie County was known as East Florida in 1810. In 1821, the area was renamed St. Johns County, and St. Johns was split into several counties in 1840, and this area became Mosquito County. 10 years later, the Mosquito County area is slashed into 2 new counties, and the area becomes St. Lucie for the first time.
Wow. Mosquito County.
Mosquito County.
How fitting.
Could have just been the state.
Yeah, 100%.
30 more years pass, and in 1880, the borders were again changed, and it became Brevard County, which I didn't know.
What?
Now, on July 1st, 1905, St. Lucie County, Florida, is established with Fort Pierce as the county seat, and portions are stripped away over the years. First in 1917, Western Acres are taken away to become Okeechobee County.
What?
I did not know this went down like this.
No.
There's a lot of back and forth going on.
I know, like, all the places being named.
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
We definitely know these areas.
Right.
But the way we know them are not the way they were.
No. And I never realized that.
Me either.
Wow.
In 1925, a northern chunk of land is removed and becomes Indian River County, and the southern part of St. Lucie, as well as a portion of Palm Beach County, become Martin County that same year. Now, Fort Pierce, Stewart, and Vero were distinct, mostly self-contained communities linked by US 1 and the high school football team rivalries. Now, vast amounts of undeveloped land lay between each city, and since the Turnpike and I-95 were still on the drawing board, there wasn't much commuting. The only region residents considered themselves to be part of was South Florida for those in Martin County and East Central Florida for those in Indian River County, and Fort Pierce, a retail hub that attracted shoppers from Vero. Now, Port St. Lucie, now the most populous community in the region, had barely a subdivision or two in the early 1960s. It had been rumored for years that there was sunken treasure off the coast, and occasionally you'd hear of a beachcomber finding a gold coin or two after a storm. Then, in the 1960s and 70s, organized and well-equipped treasure salvers started finding huge amounts of gold and silver, and they would bring it up from shipwrecks of a fleet of Spanish galleons that sank in a hurricane in 1715.
1715.
Now, I wasn't alive for any of this, but I have heard these stories
Absolutely.
before. This
Absolutely.
is a few years, actually not really all that long before I was born, but it began with Kip Wagner's Real 8 Company and Mel Fisher's Treasure Salvers Enterprise. A gold rush was on, and the sleepy communities of Vero, Sebastian, Fort Pierce, and Stewart were transformed. It wasn't long before folks started calling the region the Treasure Coast. That's why they call it that.
Stop.
I knew I was going to blow your mind with that.
What?
I know. Yep, that's why they call it the Treasure Coast.
I had no idea.
I didn't either.
I never put those two together.
Wow. I know the Treasure Coast, obviously, but I never knew why it was called. I just thought it was like, oh, it was a beautiful place to live.
And we knew people found a bunch of gold and all kinds of things and shipwrecks.
But people find gold in Florida all the time because of the old Spanish wrecks. I mean, I've heard of this one in particular, but I never really put the two together that is why they called this area the Treasure Coast.
Blew my mind.
Like,
wow.
With our area, we'll get into it, but they go into that too. Now, Ed Register of Fort Pierce was executive director of the St. Lucie County Chamber of Commerce from 1962 to 1967. He says he has no idea where the idea for the Treasure Coast originated. Quote, it's just kind of evolved, he said. Now, Pam Cooper, Florida history and genealogy librarian for the Indian River County Library, has a large collection of local historical records at her fingertips. Quote, there's no definitive source saying who named it the Treasure Coast, she said.
Just kind of.
It just evolved. It just came out of nowhere. People just came up with it.
Here we are. That's pretty cool.
During this time, the Treasure Coast was booming. Growth was happening and tourism had started to really take off due to it was a modern gold rush, really. Meanwhile, about 20 years before this, a man would be born that would forever change the area of Port St. Lucie forever.
Dun, dun, dun.
And he did. It's bad. We're going to get into Gerard John Schaefer. I'm going to warn everybody one last time. Even some of the stuff in his origin story is pretty bad.
Okay. I'm ready. Are you guys ready?
They said yes.
Okay, good.
Now, Gerard John Schaefer Jr. was an American murderer and suspected serial killer, known as the Killer Cop, the Hangman, and the Butcher of Blind Creek, who was convicted of the 1972 murder and mutilation of 2 teenage girls in Port St. Lucie, Florida. He is suspected of up to 26 further murders. Gerard was described by prosecutor Robert Stone as, quote, the most sexually deviant person that he had ever encountered.
Ew.
Schaefer became known as the Killer Cop because he was a sheriff's deputy in Martin County, Florida, at the time of his initial arrest. He was a police officer.
What a jerk. And I bet he got away with doing a lot of things because of that.
Honestly, his span was not that long.
Well,
it seems like they caught him pretty quick if he only did the 2. I'm just saying.
If.
He also became known as the hangman due to his favorite practice of binding restrained women to trees with a hangman's noose around their neck prior to their torture and murder.
Oh.
Now, Gerard John Schaefer Jr. was born on March 25th, 1946 in Neenah, Wisconsin. He was the first of 3 children for Gerard and Doris Schaefer, describing himself in later life as the illegitimate product of a, quote, forced marriage.
And he knows this because...
You'll find out.
Okay.
His family's really messed up.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Now, I'm going to put up a picture of him right now. This dude looks like a nice guy.
Okay.
If you pass this dude on the street, you would wave back and say hi.
Creepy.
It's very weird.
I think that's like
the weirdest.
The creepiest.
That's the worst kind of people.
And yeah, because like everybody, he's got one of those just trusting faces.
Oh,
and
he
like,
does.
Could probably just like pull off this innocent
and
vibe.
when he's younger, he's not like a bad looking guy. Mm-hmm. And he looks like a very friendly person. Mm-mm. And I feel like I just feel like it's worse.
Right.
His father did well as a traveling salesman for Kimberly-Clark, soon moving the family to an affluent suburb of Atlanta, Georgia. There, young Gerard did well at Marist Academy. It's a Catholic parochial school.
Okay.
I don't know what that is. Some might say Schaefer's early life was, quote, idyllic. But Schaefer didn't feel that way. He recalled that his parents never had a good relationship, and his father was, quote, always critical, and his mother, quote, always on my back to do better. But I feel like a lot of people were back then.
Yeah, back then, and I feel like it was worse. But honestly, that's what parents are supposed to do.
No. Take it back.
Maybe not these specific parents and the way that they did things. I'm just saying, like,
everybody remember Megan's stance on this before we move forward.
I'm not talking about them specifically. I'm talking about being parents. So you're just going to let our kids go and do whatever the hell they want to do, just because, with no guidance whatsoever.
Schaefer later described his childhood as, quote, troubled and turbulent, largely due to frequent family relocations, his father's alcoholism, and his father's frequent verbal abuse of his wife and children. Although the Gerard Sr.'s occupation resulted in his being frequently absent from the household, he had a difficult relationship with his oldest son, who resented his frequent belittling of him, and because of this, Schaefer was very close to his mother, who was extremely protective of her children. Gerard Sr. was also said to heavily favor his daughter Sarah, which made Gerard John, quote, want to be a girl. Those are his words.
Oh.
It was at this time in his life that he admitted to having thoughts, quote, I wanted to die, Schaefer told a psychiatrist. I couldn't please my father, so in playing games, I always got killed. He's very young at this point. Okay. He's like maybe 8.
Oh my.
As a child, Schaefer preferred outdoor activities. As a young boy, he had developed an interest in nature. His primary interests as a teenager included collecting guns, hunting, and fishing, activities that he and his father occasionally pursued together when his father was at home. At the age of about 12 or 13, he, quote, discovered women's panties and began to masturbate while wearing them. He also practiced masochistic bondage. Quote, I'd tie myself up to a tree, struggle to get free, and I'd get excited sexually and do something to hurt myself, unquote.
Oh.
These are his words from an interview. Soon the violent images turned outward. Quote, I would fantasize hurting other people, women in particular. Schaefer admitted that he had a large preoccupation with death, sometimes reaching the point where he, quote, didn't know what was fact and what was fantasy.
That's scary.
It gets scarier, unfortunately. Much, much scarier.
That's
because
terrifying.
These are just the thoughts of a young boy.
Right.
You still have that hope that maybe this is like a phase or maybe just intrusive thoughts.
Right.
But nobody really knew how bad this kid was, because he was really good at projecting that nice guy,
right,
to the world. And he wasn't okay. He's not okay.
I lived in Nashville, but we moved to Georgia. You lived in Sexton Woods, which is off of Peachtree, I guess, the big street. And I went to Sexton Woods Elementary School, and then I went to Our Lady of the Assumption, and then I went to Marist for the beginning of my first year of high school, but then we moved to Florida. But I grew up in the Catholic school in Assumption, and played league ball with the Catholic League in Atlanta in 1958, 59, and 60, and would have gone to Marist Military School with all the other guys from Assumption. They either went to Pius X or Marist. That's all you went to. And then we moved down here, and I went to the Catholic school. Did all the normal things, mostly sports. Catholics are very big on sports. Basketball and football, especially in the Catholic League. I don't know what it's like now in Atlanta, but back then it was, you had the private school circuit, where all the different private schools had their own league, and we played Westminster and all the different, private Catholic schools and private Christian schools. Well, that was my thing. I was a golfer. I played at Chastain Park, and I was at Chastain Park when I wasn't doing anything else. I was at Chastain Park hitting the golf balls and hunting and fishing at the Murphy Candler. They made that into a park, but before it was a park, that's when I lived there, and they had the lake, and you could go up there and shoot the 22s and fish for brim and bass in the Murphy Candler Park Lake. And I'd sneak on Peachtree Country Club and fish in their lakes, stuff kids do. In Atlanta, it's like when you're going into puberty and you start discovering about sports, and you get into this male bonding thing, and we're on the basketball team. I was a starter, and I was on the football team. I was an end, and golf was coming up for high school, and I had to get out there and get ready to be on the golf team. And Atlanta had a good golf program. Junior golf has always been big in it. My father worked for Kimberly-Clark Corporation, paper manufacturer. He was a salesman for them, and everything was fine. Well, Sexton Woods is not like a low-class area, My dad was a good salesman, and one of their best. I'm the eldest brother, and I have a younger brother. Family of three, mom and dad and the dogs.
Get to know the family.
Went to work, a 9-to-5er, working for Kimberly-Clark in downtown Atlanta, and occasionally being on the road, as sales meetings and that. And, going to Catholic school and coming home and doing your homework and doing sports, going up to the lake. What's the big lake? No, I didn't have an abused childhood or anything like that. Regularly good childhood. I didn't even know what marijuana was until I got into university. My parents were very strict, straight-up Catholics. I mean, Catholic school, Mass every morning, Mass on the weekends. You go to Sunday church, you don't do anything before you go to church. Straight-up Catholics. They were Catholics before they got married. They got married as Catholics, and they're raised as Catholics. And Catholics see everything sort of like black and white. The sin is over here, and the correctness is over here, and there's no gray area in between. That's how Catholics are. And of course, growing up that way, and being in the Catholic elementary school and the Catholic high school, I had a very, very black and white view of the world, what's right and what's wrong. And I didn't learn to equivocate until I got to the university for gray areas. But that's how I was raised. I was raised very strictly in the Catholic Church. In fact,
the Schaefers moved to Fort Lauderdale, Florida in 1960, promptly joining the local yacht and country clubs. And Gerard Jr. met his girlfriend Cindy when he was 14 and saw her steadily for the next 3 years. And this is the most dysfunctional teenage relationship ever.
Ew.
Now, they were lovers, but Cindy would only perform in scripted scenarios, demanding that Schaefer tear her clothes and each time they had sex. When he balked at continuing the game in 1964, she dumped him. He didn't even want to do this.
Cindy. Come on now.
Oh, boy.
Come on now.
Yeah, so he wasn't into it, even though he had already started to have some
type of feelings for that kind
tendencies,
of thing.
yeah, but he wanted a normal relationship with her, and she wasn't not down with it.
Cindy's
a freak.
Woo, woo.
Hey, and I'm not freak shaming. I'm
no, not at all.
I mean, I'm not a freak, but so the same day, Schaefer went into the woods and played his bondage games again for the first time since leaving Georgia. Yearbooks from St. Thomas Aquinas High School list Schaefer as a member of the football team in his sophomore and junior years, but no one remembers him playing or joining in any group activities.
What?
Yeah.
Did he? Wait.
I don't know.
Did he just like squeeze into pictures for the yearbook or something?
The majority of this story is coming from it's kind of like an online website book.
Okay.
And it goes into great detail. And a lot of these are actual accounts from people who knew him.
Wow.
And nobody remembers him actually
like playing
any sports or being in activities.
Quote unquote a part of?
Yeah. So it's very
weird.
Strange.
Okay.
Now, classmates recall him as being a loner, labeled, quote, weird and, quote, out of it. And one noted that Schaefer, quote, would practically stand on his head to see up a girl's skirt. Now, in class, he angered the nuns by questioning religious dogma, once writing a long essay scientifically challenging the virgin birth of Christ.
Oh wow.
And this is back in the 60s.
The 60s, yeah.
So people didn't really do that back then. Or actually, it might have been the 50s.
I'm a priest. Yeah, I had some problems with the Catholic Church's structure. It's too dogmatic, and they don't invite you to question the dogma. And I'm a questioning, sensitive person. I'm a creative person, and I have a good imagination and a good mind. And I want to be able to go to the priest and say, what's the story on this? Virgin birth, right? How do you explain this? What's the story? Give me some books to read about this. And they don't want to hear it. They, woo, Okay. And that's how come I didn't go. I had golf age 12 and 13 and 14, that age right in there, 11 to 14. The first kiss was at a high school dance in Fort Lauderdale. I remember it very well, out underneath the ficus tree. I can even tell you what she was wearing. It was lovely. She was one of the girls at the Catholic school. But as far as, having sex, there was none of this sexual stuff like that goes on in the schools today. And everybody's, wearing little brief costumes and everything. You didn't see that back in 1961 and 62. I had good experiences. I went, in fact, when Kathy Wrightson, the first kiss, I went steady with her all the way through high school. So until I was out of high school, I only dated one girl. Well, the regular petting that anybody does when you're in high school, kissing and petting. But as far as sexual intercourse, no, not in high school. That's telling tales out of school, isn't it? That wouldn't be very nice to put somebody's name like that into like that, who was sexually repressed and could not enjoy a normal, intimate relationship. Okay. But that's how people are, and especially in some girls that are brought up in very strict Catholic schools. I found out that are so repressed sexually that they just have to feel as though that they've been forced into it and can't say. They say no, and you just have to say yes, and you have to be forceful and persistent, and then they say, oh, I'm overwhelmed, and that's how they rationalize it away. Well, I'm more of a romantic type, and I like moonlight and flowers and romance, and that sort of this was beyond my experience. I didn't understand it at the time. Later, when I went to the university and I studied abnormal psychology, I began to understand that there are people who are not sexually the way that normal people are. Like I say, normal, I just know how I am. I'm a romantic, but other people aren't. And apparently she needed that kind of forcefulness of personality to make it okay for her. It wasn't like she went home bruised and bleeding or anything like that, It's a scenario. But a role playing, I guess, is what you call it. And probably what they do with sexual surrogates today, officially, if you've got some problem, they meet you up with somebody and you role play it out. Apparently this is a big business out there. I don't know what they do out there now. I've been here 20 years. Oh, Lee, you should think.
Now, mostly, he preferred solitary pursuits, especially hunting in the Everglades. Neighbor Gary Hainline remembered that Schaefer, quote, enjoyed shooting things you can't eat. Songbirds, land crabs, that sort of thing. And Schaefer sometimes played tennis with Gary's sister, Lee, which I think is so funny because it's spelled the way you spell your middle name. Mm-hmm. Though sources disagree on whether they dated or not. But Lee Hainline was 2 years older than Schaefer, and he sometimes crept around her house at night, while he watched her undress through the window. She was not the only female target of his voyeurism, but Schaefer blamed them all for, quote, taunting him, despising them as, quote, sluts and whores.
Excuse me. She is literally in her home, in her bedroom, changing. That is none of your business.
I couldn't agree with you more.
None of your business, sir.
I couldn't agree with you more. This is the indication here that I'm not saying like looking up girl skirts and like choking yourself out, in the woods. Mm-hmm. None of that is normal by any means.
Right.
I feel like it was easier as a boy back in those days to be like, he's a boy. Boys will be boys. He's looking up girl skirts.
Especially for the time.
It's not okay, though. I'm not saying it's okay because it's not. But I feel like that's a lot more passable than the peeping Tom aspect because that was even frowned upon back then.
Yeah.
There was no boys being boys when it came to that.
Do not.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Now, although he dated in his high school years, several female classmates viewed him with disdain. They did not like him.
I wonder why.
One former classmate, Barbara Krolik, later said, quote, I can't remember him being friends with any of the guys. He was always on the outside looking in. As a matter of fact, the only thing I really remember is that I always had to tuck my skirt under my legs because Schaefer would practically stand on his head to look up a girl's skirt.
Coming from a girl.
Yes.
Like she felt the need to wrap her skirt around herself.
Yes.
When he was near.
In his presence, absolutely.
Gross.
In the spring of 1964, Schaefer met 17-year-old Sandy Stewart at a school dance. She later described him as a, quote, dazzling young stranger who swept her away and became her first lover, all the while impressing her family with his impeccable manners. That's what I'm saying. This dude really does look like the all-American boy.
And knows how to say things and do things.
Yeah.
And
well, because he's a psychopath.
Yeah.
Schaefer took her on excursions to the Everglades, seeming amused when Sandy couldn't bring herself to kill an animal for sport. She found him, quote, a sensitive and enthusiastic lover, unquote, eager to please. It sounds so gross. Schaefer went on to graduate in June of 1964, but the romance continued, and he traveled with Sandy's family and became a fixture at their home. And for the first time ever, Gerard's life seemed truly idyllic, but nothing could be further from the truth.
Oh boy.
Now, oddly enough, even though he was still dating Sandy Stewart, Schaefer considered joining the priesthood in 1964. He applied to St. John's Seminary and was promptly rejected. Gerard himself went on to say, quote, they said I didn't have enough faith. I didn't think it was fair. And after years of daily mass attendance, Schaefer decided that he had been, quote, under a certain Catholic mind control thing, and he left the church for good.
Well,
I find that weird that he was going to go, join the priesthood. Yeah.
No.
Just 3 months later, he enrolled at Broward Community College, where it is said he was less than a star student. Now, Schaefer spent more time hunting in the Everglades, and his relationship with Sandy started to deteriorate quickly. Schaefer often poured out angry, tearful revelations of his urge to kill the women who aroused him, like his neighbor Lee Hainline, who stripped before an open window, or another who dared to sunbathe in her own backyard. Sandy saw firsthand his violent clashes between him and his father, listened to the stories of his ex-girlfriend Cindy and her rooms, and finally, no longer able to live like this, she ended their relationship. He said all this to her.
Bruh. How dare she sunbathe in her backyard?
I mean, yeah, all that's bad, but what was he thinking telling somebody this stuff?
He has to know that it's not normal, right?
I don't know if he does.
Right?
I don't know if he does.
Like what?
Oh, Lee, was she thinking of undressing in front of the window? Well, she was another girl. She went to Stranahan, and I went to St. Thomas, and Stranahan is a secular high school, and she was more liberated, you know, and she got off on doing her little striptease in front of her window at night for myself and Pete Maddock and Topper Keefe and the boys of the neighborhood, right? And she was entertaining. And I always felt that was kind of slutty, you know? So that's not the way that good Catholic girls behave. She wasn't a Catholic girl. She was brought up in a different system, and she was trying to attract male attention. Her name was Lee Hainline. Well, naturally I get turned on just like everybody else, because mostly it was a group thing. All the guys are over, were playing cards or watching TV or whatever, you know. And Lee, we'd say, oh, it's getting about 10 o'clock. Lee'd be up in the window, you know. We'd go out on the yard and watch. You know, I'm not judgmental. I went over to Lee's house and made a move on her. Yeah, well, obviously she was up there dancing around looking for some attention. I think I gave her attention. I went up and she invited me right up to the bedroom. I had a good time with Lee. I was in college when I was with Sunderland. She was in high school, but I was in college. I met her at a high school dance, and I was at the dance with a girl by the name of Dee Cunningham. And I looked over there and I saw Sandra, and she was sitting there, and she looked awfully familiar. And I went up to her and I said, don't I know you from somewhere? It was a great opening line, right? But I just had to do it. I was compelled. I just knew her from somewhere, it seemed like. And she said, no, I don't think so, you know. Well, eventually I found out what her name was. I asked somebody what her name was, that it was Sandy Stewart. And I went home and I looked in the phone book, and I went down the Stewarts, and I went through every S-T-U-A-R-T trying to find it, and every S-T-E-W-A-R-T trying to find it. And finally I tracked her down. I think I asked one of the guys who went to Stranahan, you know. But I called her up and I got a date, man. You know, I'm not bashful. If I like them, I call them up and say, let's go out. And that's what I did with her. And we hit it off very well, and we went steady for about a year. A lovely relationship. That's right, around the end of '65, maybe September or so, because she was going off to New College, and I was staying in college where I went here in Florida. New College is on the other side of the state. So we broke it off. No, she was going away to school, and you can't go steady when somebody's in Tampa and you're in Fort Lauderdale. It was very amicable. It's that we had a great time together, and it's time to move on. Complicate things by trying to remain steadies, but there was no animosity or anything like that. I was hurt naturally, you know, because I take a much deeper interest in my relationships. Sandy's she's flighty and superficial in her relationships, and she moves around, bounces around from one to another, whereas I'm a one-man, one-woman type of person, because that's the way that I was raised and trained in the Catholic Church. I always blame it on the Catholic Church, just like Frank Zappa and every other Catholic guy that gets hooked into this one-man relationship. He said, yeah, I've got to blame it on the nuns and the priests, because that's what they taught us. And I was just not taught to be promiscuous. If you had a relationship that was emotional and sexual with somebody, it was a commitment, and you made a commitment to them, and you were their friend and their lover, and promiscuous. If you had a relationship that was emotional and sexual with somebody, it was a commitment, and you made a commitment to them, and you were their friend and their lover, and you didn't stray, you know. Here's what happened.
Schaefer begged and pleaded for her to come back. He even went on to stalk her while she dated other men, before he finally gave up. And next, Schaefer confessed his homicidal urges to his creative writing teacher, who in turn referred him to the college's counselor. He told Dr. Neil Crispo he wanted to join the army because he, quote, would like to kill things. I even like to shoot at cows now. Now, Gerard at some point had begun to kill livestock, cutting off the heads of the animals with a machete before he would their carcasses.
Oh. Bro.
Yeah.
No.
I felt so weird writing that.
No.
Is that problematic for you?
I mean, like you hear with most serial killers or, people with those type of tendencies that they kill animals. And like, that's one of the signs, along with wetting the bed and like all these, all these other things.
Wetting the bed, starting fires, what's something, I don't remember.
Killing animals. Torturing animals.
No, I think that falls under killing animals. I
Does
believe
it?
it's
Okay.
those three things.
Okay.
But yeah, this is really bad.
But that's too far. It's too far.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Because now we've gone from self-pleasing through torturing oneself to peeping toms and wanting to kill the girls that you're going out of your way to watch.
Mm-hmm. Because it's their fault.
To killing animals for no reason, to then killing animals, beheading them, and having sex with their dead bodies.
Sir, too much.
I mean, nothing in this is going to get better as we go.
Oh, I know.
I think we have like a little light period in his life.
Oh, God.
But that's about it.
So if anyone is listening to this and you are uncomfortable, I'm so very sorry.
Yeah, I mean, we are too.
Like,
it is what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It is what it is.
Back at school in the autumn of 1965, Schaefer completed one semester before leaving to travel with the Sing Out 66, the musical road troupe of the super patriotic, quote, moral rearment movement. Okay. They're like they're a singing group.
No, I get that, but is it like a patriotic group?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I just said super patriotic.
I don't know. Okay, that's just weird.
Future movie star Glenn Close was part of the chorus, but Schaefer preferred Boston native Martha Fogg. So he could have dated Glenn Close, apparently.
What?
Now, they dated that summer, Schaefer planning to join the group's European tour, but he was sidelined by measles and lost touch with Fogg, returning to college in September of the following year. Gerard graduated from Broward Community College in 1967 with an associate degree in business administration. Upon completion of his sophomore year at Broward, he applied for and was accepted for a scholarship at Florida Atlantic University, or FAU, in Boca Raton, where he began his studies in 1968 with aspirations to obtain a Bachelor of Arts in Education. I mean, so even if he's not doing great at school, I mean, he's doing it.
He's doing something, I guess.
I mean,
education, though. What's
wrong with that?
I don't like that.
Well, I mean,
all the other things
but nobody
that this man has going on.
Knows what he's doing at this point. Like nobody knows the things that are going on. We only know this because hindsight is 2020. Mm-hmm. We know because the case has already been cracked.
I get that.
But during the time, other than his girlfriend that he poured his heart out to, nobody really knows most of this is going on. Mm-hmm. This is all a big secret.
Gross.
His grades failed to support a student deferment, and Schaefer was ordered to report for his Army physical in April of 1968. Instead, he left a suicide note in his dorm room and fled. A roommate, Jerry Webster, found him at their favorite shooting range, Schaefer later stating that, quote, he did it to help him get the deferment. So he's trying to help. He's saying that he's trying to get out of being drafted. He's draft dodging.
I get it. But that, like, you didn't even leave your area.
No.
What?
Well, no, because then you're isn't that what are they? Then you get in trouble for draft dodging. He's doing it in a way where they're like, we don't want you.
Okay. Well, I guess that makes more sense.
It's like they won't take you if you're like suicidal,
like mentally ill, and things like that. Yeah.
Dr. Raymond Killinger referred Schaefer for emergency psychiatric testing on May 17th, 1968. The test revealed no suicidal urges, but found that his, quote, psychological disorganization is severe and his frustration level low. I have no idea what that means. I guess they're like, he's crazy. I don't know.
I don't know. Like, his compartmentalizing and his brain is all over the place, or?
No, I just think they're saying he's out of his mind, but takes it well.
Okay.
Nothing supports Schaefer's later claim that he wore women's underwear to beat the draft, but he did receive a 1Y deferment for mental, moral, or physical reasons. No one from FAU recalls him wearing women's clothing, though Schaefer insisted he, quote, was very open about it. Because back then, they wouldn't take you if you were gay or something.
Yeah.
Now, the draft dodge claim surfaced only after police searched his mother's home in 1973 and found snapshots of Schaefer dressed in lingerie. Meanwhile, the 22-year marriage of his parents was falling apart. I definitely couldn't see that coming.
Yeah.
Gerard Sr. had continued drinking heavily for years and constantly cheating on his wife behind her back. And in May 1968, he lost his sales job and things went from bad to worse. Doris then filed for divorce on July 2nd and her husband moved out.
I mean,
I'm sure she was way happier.
Yeah.
Because he sounds like a terrible guy.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't want to do that for years, that's for sure.
Yeah. Now, Schaefer, working a construction job at the time, quit and embarked on a hunting trip to Michigan. He returned to Florida accompanied by Sing Out's Martha Fogg and startling news of their new engagement. And the two quickly married in December of 1968.
Wait, what?
So he just went off on a hunting trip to Michigan and came back with a
wife.
Fiance.
Okay. Well.
And it was the girl that he tried to travel to Europe with, but he couldn't go.
Right.
Weird.
Oh, okay.
It's just so weird that you would run into somebody randomly in another state.
Yeah.
I don't.
I'm like, oh, hey.
Yeah, it's very strange.
What?
Now, the newlyweds moved in with Schaefer's mother and began attending Florida Atlantic University in January 1969. Schaefer was assigned as a student teacher at Plantation High School on February 27th, but he soon ran into trouble. Persistent efforts to, quote, impose his moral and political views on the students, unquote, alarmed staff members, and Plantation's principal fired him a few weeks later, stating it was due to Schaefer's, quote, totally inappropriate behavior. And he then found himself jobless for several months after, and Schaefer mostly stayed at home or in the Everglades, but his mind was working overtime.
Oh, you don't say he had totally inappropriate behavior that made him lose a job?
Well, they're saying because he was trying to, like, you know how you talk about certain people that at work sometimes that will go off on political tangents, and
yes,
it was stuff like that, but he was trying to push it on the children, that and his just weird ideologies when it comes to stuff. So the school was like, we can't have you doing that.
They're like, yeah, no, we're good.
Yeah. Can't have that. He constantly dwelled on his failure as a priest and a teacher. Increasingly, Schaefer found himself, quote, convinced that indecent women and prostitutes should be destroyed for the welfare of society. And Gerard knew just the person for the job. And next week, Megan's going to tell you all about his journey through that.
I sure am.
Oh, man.
Oh, my God. Well, this is not starting out great.
No, it's starting out really, really bad.
Super bad. Why?
And it's only going to get worse as we go. So
this man,
there's probably going to be some interview clips and stuff like that where I can find them that'll be in through here, because I want people to be able to kind of get a glimpse of this guy and maybe even, some look, he looks like a normal person. Nothing about this guy looks off to me.
No, you mean like a Ted Bundy? Or
he looks more normal than that, though.
Really?
Yes, he looks like a very normal individual.
Wow.
To the point where, like, there was one image of him, I think it might have been during his arrest, and he's smiling, his hair's done, he looks very clean cut. He just looks normal. But the stuff he does,
so scary.
The stuff he does to women is outrageous.
It's so scary.
It is so bad. But that's where we're going to pick up next week, and it's probably going to get way worse.
I know. I'm not ready.
And you get to talk about it.
Yay. But it does end up leading to paranormal things. So
we
are very, very excited.
It does. But that is going to be the end of part 1.
Yes.
And where can they find us?
Well, They can find us on Instagram at @forthebooze_podcast and on Facebook at For the Booze.
That's right. You can also find us on X at For the Booze. You can find us right here on YouTube at For the Booze, and you can also find us over on TikTok at For the Booze. Mm-hmm. I got cut out a little bit there, but you get the point. And don't forget, you can, if you'd like to help the show out, come on over to Patreon. It is /ForTheBooze_podcast.
That's right.
You can join the ranks of, Jen Kim, Tina Madot, Joe Mattern, and then we also have our producer level of Eric Belial and Teresa O'Donnell.
That's right. We love our Patreon.
When we hit the Halloween next year, we'll go back to giving names out.
Yes.
So much work trying
to do that. We also
over
there, we do another podcast. We do a Behind the Booze podcast on top, just for our Patreon people.
That's right. And even though we took a week off publicly, we did do an episode for them.
We sure did.
We just did for the... oh my goodness.
For the Booze Reviews.
Yeah, I can't talk. For the Booze Reviews over there. So if you never want to miss anything, head on over there /ForTheBooze_podcast.com.
Yes.
And if you have any paranormal stories you'd like us to read on the show, or some suggestions, or just want to say, hey, check us out.
Send them to
forthebooze12@gmail.com.
That's right.
Right up there. But I guess this is probably where we're going to end it.
I think so. Well, until part 2. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening, and we will see you in the next one.
Bye. I have nothing to say. He's so bad. So bad.